Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girls podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading, and wherever you are tuning in today, we are so glad to have you. Let's get this thing started. All right, so I want to open up with this. Let's be honest. Modern life doesn't come with an off switch. For high-achieving women, the pressure to succeed in all areas, career, family, health, and personal fulfillment can feel relentless. We're told to chase dreams, care for others, stay composed, and somehow keep every plate spinning. But what if real success isn't about doing more? It's about choosing what matters most. What if the secret to a good life is learning how to prioritize you? Today, we're going to be diving into what it really means to thrive in a world that depends so much from women. So I am so excited about my guest today. This is going to be so much fun. But before I welcome her on officially, we do need to do a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine. All right. And with that, we do want to also make a mention to head on over to startergirls.com. I tell you this every single week because I want you to get over there. And why do I want you to go over there? For a couple reasons. One, if you have missed any of our episodes, and there are so many, go back and you can find anything you want, even the cheesy ones in the beginning. They're there. You can also sign up for our community newsletter, and then that way you can keep in the know of who's coming out and all of our fabulous guests that are sharing content. But also, if you are maybe one of those high-achieving women or men, and you want to know what sabotaging block may be hindering your success, I have a fun, cool quiz over there. It's like 2 minutes. You can take it, and it will tell you what may be blocking your success right now. So again, startergirls.com. Go do your thing. All right. I need to welcome my guest, and I'm looking at my phone because I always do this to put my notes in here so I don't lose my train of thought. But here we go. My guest, Dr. Denise Brown, also known as the Fairy God Doctor, is a physician, CEO, and transformational leader with over 30 years in healthcare. In her book, The Fairy God Doctor's Guide to a Good Life, a prescription for the working woman, she offers a practical and powerful framework to help women avoid burnout, reclaim their energy, and create success that's both sustainable and deeply fulfilling. While her work speaks directly to working women, the insights she shares are relevant to anyone navigating big dreams and big responsibilities. So, Dr. Denise Brown, I'm so excited to have you here today. I know this is going to be fun. Welcome to the Starter Girls Show.
I'm thrilled to be here. Whoop, whoop.
It's going to be great. Okay. And first of all, you know what's so funny is whenever I bring guests on the show, I always have to do like a little background, and I go look at them and I check out to see like where they've been on other shows, kind of their content. And I'm like, I saw you. I don't even know what episode I saw you in, but I'm like, I like this girl's personality. I just like it. She's got that salty, kind of saucy, spunky. I love it because that is how I roll. And that's what I think a lot of our listeners, I'm not saying everybody that listens like that, but I think that they kind of like that authenticity and that raw and that real. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to be like speaking kind of some language together today, and I'm excited about it.
We'll try and keep it, safe for work.
That's right. That's right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. So let's start this thing off because you have been in healthcare for 30 years. And I want to kind of start there. What brought you to that? Because I think this is so fun. I've had doctors on the show before, and I'm always intrigued about, why medicine? What brought you here today?
Yeah. Well, I've had sort of lots of careers, which I think, if you talk to any woman who's lived an interesting life, we probably have one career a decade, maybe, if not more. That's certainly been the case for me. But I did start in medicine, and now I sort of I'll call them medicine adjacent things. But I've always been fascinated by how things work. My parents were both scientists, so I was raised in a goofy little town, Los Alamos, New Mexico. Top secret, but really interesting times to live in the sort of end of the Cold War. And I've always just been really interested in how things work. And there's nothing more fascinating than the human body. So when I was in college, I thought I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. So that's weird. I did the radio news, like on the
Wow.
college radio station every day, and I found out that the stories I liked the most had to do with kind of health and healthcare related stuff, and I just felt like that was interesting and something was telling me something. And my parents had made me do all the science classes regardless. So when it came time to sort of decide, what I was going to do after graduation, medical school seemed like a perfect kind of combination. And so off I went, and I loved it. It was so fascinating to me, just like really kind of scrunching down and understanding all sorts of different things, and then more importantly, kind of putting it all back together and figuring out how that worked. And so, when you train to be a doctor, you learn kind of. I mean, if you're a good one, maybe there's plenty of crappy ones out there, but the good ones really learn how to be a good listener, right? You got to really listen to what somebody's telling you. And you have to ask kind of directed questions to kind of get at the thing that, may be missing, that maybe people are nervous to say or afraid to say. And then you have to find out the sort of objective information and kind of put it all together into a package that may not be perfect, but it's what you have at the time. And then you've got to make a plan, and then you've got to go implement that plan. And then most importantly, you have to be willing to change the plan when different information comes up. And so it's a really nice kind of rubric really for being a doctor, but also really kind of anything else that you want to do in life. And so that just kind of set me on my way. And I'm very grateful for it. I practiced medicine exclusively for about 15 years before I started getting more involved in businessy kind of aspects of healthcare. And some days I really, really, really miss taking care of people. And some days I really don't miss insurance companies and paperwork. So
yeah. You said so many good things. And first of all, I've been to Los Alamos, so I know about that place. I've been there. Yes, I know what you're talking about. I wanted to say that. You said so many really good things here because you mentioned like, being a good doctor and what you just said, and like applicable in many areas, because asking good questions, right? I think that, like I know personally because I deal with chronic conditions. So I have doctors that I absolutely love. And I will tell you the ones that I like investigate. They're solution oriented. They investigate, and I talk about my GI doctor. I actually interviewed him on my other show at one point, but I talked about how he kind of back this up to like 2017, 2000, and maybe, no, it was actually before that, because I started doing keto in 2017 to actually cure a disorder, because I was dealing with a nerve condition, and I was at Innswit, and this is where I ended up. But he was the doctor that actually introduced me to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because he was developing a product and he had a research facility. And so he sort of sent me on this journey of investigation, and so I have my doctors that I absolutely love that are good at asking questions, good at finding solutions. And then I have the ones that no. No. So you hit the nail on the head when you said that. But I think that's so applicable in anything we do, right? It's asking good questions and being a good listener so that you can figure out how to actually really help someone.
Yeah. And I think the most important probably part of that we need to highlight is the curiosity to actually be to kind of be willing to have your mind expanded. And I think that's a big thing. So like, SIBO is a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who are like, this was a game changer for my life, completely transformed my life. There are plenty of other doctors who kind of roll their eyes, right? Because they're just not open to the universe. And, you get exactly what you give. I think curious people are interesting, and I think they find other people interesting. So that's definitely one of the recipes for living a good life, is to be curious and to be open, and you never know what you're going to find out, because Lord knows we don't all know it all. So
it gave me chills when you just said that. See, I love those moments when somebody says something, I'm like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Be curious. There is nothing wrong with being curious. I agree with you on this. And I think this is nothing. I don't know about you, but me personally, nothing drives me crazy more than narrow-minded people that just aren't curious at all. That are just like, no, that is the way it is, and are not curious. And so I think whatever you're doing, you should always live with curiosity, learning about people and things. And you said something even early on, being willing to change, right? Being willing, if you find out new information, to be able to say, okay, maybe we have something new now, and we need to change our thinking, or
we're going to turn a little bit in this direction. Words are really words are powerful, and I think a willingness and an openness to kind of change your mind is really the hallmark of kind of the highest intelligence, right? And it's easy for people to get stuck in thinking that they know what they know and
Right.
get really rigid in that. And I think experts in things are particularly prone to that. So like your average
Yeah.
doctor, for example, is like, oh, I know a lot. I went to school for a long time.
Right.
But that's kind of dull. But yeah, I mean, so I think the more you approach the world is like, today's my very first day and I'm just really excited to learn as much as I can.
I
I
love
think
it.
you get more out of it for
I
sure.
love it. So good. That's good. I love it, Denise. This is so great. So let's talk about curiosity because I want to know what you're doing now because you got a book. So you've moved into kind of the business side of things, which I love. You got this. And I do want to say something about that because you kind of said this early on, like the career of the decade kind of thing, because so many of us especially if we're curious people, right? We welcome a lot of things into our world. And I don't know about you, but somebody says they have an idea. I'm excited. I'm like, tell me your idea. Like I get truly excited about ideas. So I think our lives are nonlinear. And I think if we are curious people, we are always in adventures. And, like I just, funny enough, launched a little, I do pet sitting on the side. And it's not for me, it's never been about money. I love animals. I grew up around them. We've got a menagerie in my house. And it's comforting for me because I always say animals don't judge you. They love you regardless. Right. So for me, it's a comforting thing. But I just started a little like pet sitting business with my middle child. She's 24. And I started this little business with her kind of with the intent that, I want to let her kind of take it over and let her have it. She wants to go into vet tech, be a vet, maybe a vet tech. And so I thought maybe this would be a cool thing. But here we are, I'm in my 50s and like, I need another thing to add onto my plate of things. Like I got this going on the podcast. I'm an author, I'm a coach. And then I add this too, but this is what we do when we're curious, we want to explore. And so I would love to know, tell us a little bit, where you're at now and what you're doing.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm just cracking up because chapter 3 of my book is literally about nonlinear womanhood. So, there you go. I mean, life is nonlinear. It's kind of a wandering journey. So I did like I said, I started my own practice and then I rolled that into a larger practice. So that was pretty cool. And I sort of did that kind of exclusively for about 15-ish years after finishing residency. Had 2 little kids along the way, did my thing, worked hard, and then was kind of asked to start doing some business development kind of type stuff for this larger group. And I, was one of those things where I was like, I wasn't good at it. I didn't go to business school. I'd never done anything like that. But I thought, well, sure, why not? Can't hurt to try. And it turned out I just happened to be really good at it. And so little by little, I started doing more and more of that. And ultimately ended up as a sort of chief strategy and growth officer for this large physician partnership and took it from about $600 million in top line revenue a year to about $1.5 billion in top line revenue.
Wow.
And was kind of the primary driver of growth there. So it was like kind of drinking from a fire hose, but not being afraid to sort of not know everything. And I think that's one of the challenges that particularly some of the younger women I kind of work with and mentor is you think you're supposed to have it all figured out before you start.
Right.
And that's just doesn't work.
Right. It never happens, right?
Do enough research. I mean, sometimes you just have to take action. Yeah. And so I did. And that's always been kind of a mantra for me. Like, yes, I'm going to give that a rip if it sounds interesting to me. That doesn't mean I make knee-jerk decisions. I think I kind of find out about something. I usually let it sit with me. I like to let stuff marinate kind of in the back for at least a weekend. Like I want to at least sleep on it one night, preferably 2. And then somehow the answer just sort of comes to you and you know what is right. And I think you get better and better at that the more you give yourself the opportunity to do those things. But then I got recruited by a firm to run a telehealth company. And that was really fun. And I took that over as a CEO, turned it around, and then we ended up selling that in the fall of 23. And I thought to myself, my goodness, I've been going pretty much nonstop for about 24 years now. Never had taken a break ever. What would it look like if I did quote unquote nothing for a year? And so I made it 3 months. And then I thought I actually got interviewed by a magazine doing an article on exit entrepreneurs and asking me what my legacy was. And I was like, oh, my work and my legacy don't really have anything to do with each other. And she said, well, what is your legacy? And I said, well, the legacy are all the people I've made feel better along the way, whether they were patients or family or friends or whoever. And we got to talking. Anyway, one thing led to another. And she was trying to figure out if she's going to have kids, what she was going to do, was worried about her career and all this stuff. And we just got gabbing, and she said to me, I wish you would just write all this down. Like, you've figured out how to have a good life. And I wish you would write it down. And I thought, well, that's really not something I ever thought about. And I slept on it over the weekend. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to write a book. That sounds good. Like, I'm going to take her advice. So that's what I did. So I worked on that for the next 6 months or so. And then it was really fun to do all the stuff with the publisher and the editors and all these things. And then it was like, well, when do you want it? When should we release it? And I guess there's some magic in when you're supposed to release books. I don't know, but I wanted to do it as a tribute to my mom. So I put it out on what should have been her 83rd birthday. Okay. But I lost her when I was in med school. So she's been kind of like my guardian angel all these years. So I gave it to her as a birthday present. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's so awesome. Everything I'm listening was cracking up. You're like, let me sleep on at least a day too. And I'm like, I get it, because I'm a quick decision maker. And so a lot of times I've gotten better, as I've gotten older, with the pause, to just taking it down and being, okay, because I don't need a lot of information, because I feel, you mentioned this kind of trusting your intuition. You didn't necessarily say that word, but you were alluding to that decision process, because I think, as we get more comfortable in our skin, we know, right? Like, we know our priorities, we know our boundaries, we start recognizing those things, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. And it's actually such a great feeling. I mean, my husband asked me the other day, he's like, how do you know? And I'm like, you just know. You just know when you get to a place where you're okay with yourself, that if you make a decision and it goes bad, you're okay. If it messes up, it messes up. It's not the end of the world, right? Like, you're okay with that, you know? And you mentioned working with younger people. And I think as we're trying to find ourselves, there's this whole idea that we can't make a mistake. We can't be wrong. We can't be perfect. Like, we have to do all these things right, or we're just a bad human if it doesn't go right. Right. And I've learned that, no, we're still good people. We make mistakes because we're complex, and that's okay in the process, right? So I love that you kind of talked about that. I read a book, and I've talked about this several times on the show. Jamie Kern Lima, the founder of It Cosmetics, she put a book out called Worthy. I'd actually seen her in a live event, and then I ended up purchasing her book, one of my favorite books, because she talks about, herself and this journey she went through. She ended up selling her cosmetic company, I think, to Revlon, became like, rich CEO, whatever. But the first chapter, I want to say it's the first chapter, she talks about the difference between worth and confidence, and how we tend to interlace those together. And this is why you'll see people that have a lot of skill, but they're not necessarily comfortable in their own skin, right? They'll keep getting accolades, but they still don't think they're worthy. And then you could see somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of accolades, but they seem to appear, confident, grounded, all those things. And so she talked a lot about this, that how we have to work on both, because confidence is really tied to our achievements and the things that we do. And if you're a high achieving person, understanding that that's what that is, but you're still lovable, you're still likable, all of these things about you are still grounded, whether or not this happens. So you kind of said that, and I love it, because it is so true with women. They fight this all the time.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the difference between success and satisfaction. And I think success is it's the accolades, it's the external measures, right. It's everybody looking, in at you. And it's really easy to get sucked in by those bright lights, right? Where this is where you start thinking of all the things you should be doing, and, that you're supposed to be doing. All these words start popping up when you start thinking like that. Versus satisfaction, which is, in the quiet of the, dead of the night, like what actually makes your heart feel full. They may not be the same things, and often they're not. And speaking as someone who, by all accounts, has all those little boxes checked off, the med school, to this, to that, whatever, that doesn't keep you warm at night, right? That's not who you are. And it's scary to start to really kind of delve into that. And I think it's very easy to distract yourself with the things, the success measures, the accolades, and never really actually do the sort of more deep and difficult work of what actually matters to you. And in the end, that's kind of what actually matters. Like, the end, legacy isn't like, oh, this work that I did or this money that I made, right? It's the people I made feel better. Those are very different things. And so, if I could tell my sort of 25-year-old self anything, it would be like, really sink into that as soon as you can. And then it starts informing your decision-making process in a much more I hate sometimes the word authentic makes me want to kind of roll my eyes, but like you really get to figure out who you
Yeah.
are, and you really get to kind of keep picking you. And that is not a selfish decision. That's just the way you should be.
That's
Keep
good.
picking the things that matter to you. And then all of a sudden you can be really successful and really satisfied. And wouldn't it be nice to have both?
Yes. And the word meaningful was coming up when you were talking about that, right? And no, this is so true. I love that you said the satisfaction versus success, because that is so true. My priorities today are very much different than they were, before. I was 22 years in Mary Kay, crunching numbers and leadership and, winning, trying to win cars and all that stuff and grinding. And I told somebody the other day that it's interesting because there are parts of it. Mary Kay is a wonderful company. Don't get me wrong. I had a great run there. I learned a lot of leadership skills. There are things I miss and things I don't. And what I tell you that I miss the camaraderie. I miss the team. I miss the having somebody to be accountable to and having somebody be accountable to me, just that support. I miss that because I had mentors for free forever, while I was there. But I don't miss the grinding. I don't miss the punching the numbers. I don't miss the worrying about quotas and am I going to keep my car this month or whatever. And I realize that that's all when you're doing the work, it happens. But I'm in a very different place today. I'm like, man, if I knew then what I knew today, I would have rocked that thing like so
Right?
easily, right? Because I would have. My processes are so different now, and
Yeah.
my priorities are different,
Yeah.
and so all those things you're talking about, satisfaction, it's like, my satisfaction is getting up. I get up early every day. I'm up at 4:35 a.m. every single day. I have my morning routine I love. I'm pretty particular about it. Because it's mine, right? I guard it. And I love being able to do what I want to do. I love doing these podcasts. I love having conversations with you guys that are on here. That fills my cup every time I do that. And so that is satisfaction to me. And all the other stuff, yes, I get to make money on all these other things,
Right.
but I'm doing what I love doing. It's not these grinding these numbers and,
Yeah.
and so that's what I'm hearing when I hear you say this,
Oh my God.
success
Yeah.
versus satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, and you got to do both, right? You got to make
Yep.
the mortgage. You got to,
Yep.
you got to keep the lights on. So like, it's not like we're all just pie in the skies
Right.
and around with the unicorns. I mean, you have shit you got to do,
Right.
but I still think you can find that like that joy along the way of doing those things. And the more you keep choosing yourself, the easier it gets to pick yourself. The
Yeah.
easier it gets to say to your boss, that 8:30 meeting is really difficult for me because of blank.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to move it for half an hour? Like, what would
Right.
that look like? And then of course your boss is gonna be like, oh, sure, no problem. But you start to kind of show up even more and more for yourself. And so
Yeah.
that's why I wrote the book for my fairy goddaughters, to say like, hey, jump forward with me so that like, here I am in a place where I'm really thrilled to be. I would like for you to be here and not have to wait 30 years to arrive. Like, what if you
Yes.
could show up like this next week? And
Yeah.
here are my, 7 prescriptions for making that happen.
That's so awesome. And that's how I feel too about the work that I do. I feel like it's the same message. We're doing a little bit
Yeah,
different, but it's the same thing. It's like,
totally.
if I can help shave off some of the pain and the heartache and the things, and maybe, and even for my kids, I tell them, I see them do things. I'm like, please don't do that. Don't you just, no, we don't need to do all that. I'm just going to save you. I've been there, done it. Let's just not do it. And so, yes, I feel like we have, something we can share and hopefully, yes, maybe help, somebody younger come up and just shave off some of their time. But I love that you said, if you could tell what you could tell your 25-year-old self, because I think I would say the same thing. I would say, Jennifer, just slow down. You don't got to do it all. You don't have to wear all the hats. Just slow down and enjoy life a little bit, but here's the thing. We wouldn't be where we are today had we not gone through and done all those things. You know what I mean? It's like we had to do them.
Yeah, I think that's true. It might have just been a little bit easier. A lot.
Right.
I used to always, and there's a lot of people who have this problem. Yes is always my answer.
Yes.
I learned over time to sort of say yes and kind of pause.
It's good.
Because, the best person to give something else to do is a busy woman who's already doing 7 other things, right?
Right.
But that's a lot of pressure for us. And I think
Yes.
As high achieving women in particular, we tend to take on things without even realizing. So there's a lot of unintentionality where you're just like, oh yeah, all of a sudden I'm the team coach and the room mom and I'm, running a practice and also, and you don't even realize it. So you got to learn how to sort of be a little bit more specific with yourself about that. And what I like to say to people is, you can have it all, but you can't do it all.
That's
You just
right.
can't. So
That's
figure
right.
out what things you don't like to do, probably is the easiest thing to do first. What things you really not like to do? What things are you okay with doing? And then what do you love to do? And then try to work backwards from that. Like,
yeah.
For me, I talk about in the book, like I thought I would be one of those moms, we would be finger painting at home and we would be breaking bread. And, and I was like, what? I mean, I was killing myself to try to like race home to the hospital and get out the finger paints. And then I was like, you know what? This is what preschool is for. Like, this is not what I'm going to be doing at home.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sitting in the backyard on the slip and slide, And so like, you just kind of learn how to make these choices. And if you can figure out the stuff that matters and be really specific about it, then you can start to, kind of just get more and more clear on that. And then more and more savage in protecting those things. And that's what I actually think it takes is some savagery, really. I mean,
that's
no one's
great way to put it.
Me.
Yes, great way. It's so funny. I was thinking about one of my guests that came on the show a while back. She set a world record. She climbed the 7-second summits, and she's a mom of like, I think, I'm going to mess this up. I just know she has multiple kids. And she was telling this story about how she went up there to, I don't know if it was like they had a school party or whatever. And she realized she wasn't those moms that were doing that. She loved her kids and outdoorsy, but those were not. She wasn't that kind of, and I laughed because I always felt like I was kind of that mom too. I was the mom that like, I was homeroom mom. I was the field trip mom, the PT, all those moms. I wore all those hats, but I was not the mom that was like, oh my God, we're going to have all the little goodie bags and have a fancy cake. Like, I think we did one birthday party at our house, a few other places. And I got to the point like, let's just go bowling. Y'all all want to go bowling? Let's go do that. Or I'll just go pick you. We'll go to the hobby store and pick out some hot, gifts. We've always kind of been that sort of the not cliche, but I was grateful and fortunate enough that I was able to work from home. So I got to be with my kids most of the time. And now they're all grown. They're all, big adults now and doing their things. And so they can never complain that I wasn't there because I was, but we were never that, that the nail.
Yeah.
I tell you, my kids got good at doing that stuff, the nail polish things with each other and all that. Even the boy, they all did. He was the youngest. They paint him up and do him too, So
I love it. I love it.
So
yeah.
I was resonating.
It's really easy to be hard on yourself about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think is good about what you're bringing to the, the table here is that it's, we shouldn't beat ourselves up about all of these things. I think when we're young, we tend to do that because it's kind of like, I tell this story, like, remember when you had your first kid, and I don't know about you, but me, it was like, they got to be off the bottle, no pacifier. They got to be walking, no diaper, right? That's how you got to have all that done. Big kid was walking at 9 months. She was off diaper, off the bottle, all the things. By the time we got to baby number 3, that diaper stayed on until he was ready to settle down to get that diaper off. That kid would literally run around with a dirty, messy diaper because I'd have to pin him down and be like, you know what? You've had that thing on way too long. It needs to go, because I just was like, he would play. And seriously, Denise, like he would get tired. He would just fall over on the couch. And I'm like, don't mess a sleeping baby. Just leave him there. Just leave him there. He'll wake up. He'll be fine, So it's so funny how we get all these stereotypes and stigmas about how we should perform and show up. And really, everybody's just doing the best they can. Just give yourself some grace,
Well, give yourself some grace and then give everybody else some grace too. And
exactly.
I think, mommies are horrible to one another.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, women in general are not nice to one another, sadly.
Yeah.
We're constantly judging one another. We're constantly comparing. And I don't know why, because literally we are all struggling with the same shit. And
me too. We need to figure that. Maybe we need to solve that because I say that every day. I'm like, I don't know why we do this to each other. Because like if you're successful, I'm happy for you. Rock on, girl. Do your thing.
Right.
Like I'm excited for any woman that's out kicking ass and doing. I mean, doing kicking ass in a good way, like doing good business. Doing things for herself.
We get stuck in this triangle, of kind of comparison, and that kind of leads to a little bit of judgment, and that leads to a lot of guilt, and then we just kind of go right around the horn again. And who cares if that other lady's birthday party had a coordinated balloon arch and party favors, and mine was mud puddles and whatever. Did the kids have fun? Like, did you have fun?
At the end of the day, yes. Who had fun? Yep.
And I think all the social media crap makes that so much more difficult. I mean, you know, being a mom is hard enough. Going to work every day and coming home every day, that's hard enough. Like, we don't need to make it so difficult for ourselves by adding that extra layer of comparison in there. And,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing right now is probably exactly what you should be doing, and none of the rest of it. That's all coming from some weird, mythical land of should be's. And
Yeah.
I don't have any time for that anymore. But it is interesting to watch, of all ages, whether
Right.
it's on the playground, or, mommy's, on the sidelines at sports, or, even sitting around, grown and flown. Like, somehow it just rears its ugly head, and you have to be brave enough to be like, I'm not going to, participate in this.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I
This is
love,
not who I am. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll tell you, most of the people that I bring into my circle are like that. I would say
Mhm.
we don't have time for the drama stuff. I'm with you on that, Denise, because I'm
Yeah.
like you. I'm just like, do your thing, be happy. And
Yep.
if one of us is a reminder that you're not doing what you want to do, then you need to work on that. That's your thing. You need to figure your identity out, what you need to be doing. We're here to inspire.
Not
You and
my
I, we just want to inspire and make you happy. We just try to like encourage you to do great things, right? We just want you to go out and do awesome things. So you said your book, your book, you got 7 prescriptions in there.
I
I don't want
do.
you to tell us everything, but so what are these people they're going to learn about? We talked a little bit about the nonlinear. What is the
Yeah.
message?
Well, we start with that sort of success versus satisfaction concept, which I
Okay.
think is kind of foundational.
Yeah.
And then once you kind of get on that, you can really recognize that the whole work-life balance concept is bullshit, and
Right.
there's no balance. So
No.
just
You just
stop
got to
looking
find
for it.
harmony.
Yeah, you're never going to find it.
Right.
We talk a lot about deciding what plates you want to spin, and which ones you got to keep spinning, and which ones you can let crash and burn sometimes, because that happens. It's
Yeah.
going to happen. So you might as well be intentional about which ones that fall down, instead of what most people do, which is they're like, well, I can count on my husband, I can count on my kids, so I'm going to make that the last priority, or myself the last priority. Those are the
Yeah.
ones you got to treat as the treasures that they really are.
Yeah.
And then we kind of talk about, how do you make choices? How do you make decisions? Like, what does that look like for you? And how can you sort of do it most effectively for you? And then we spend a lot of time talking about comparison, guilt, and judgment. And then we sort of end up talking about how to figure out how to not do the stuff you don't like. And that doesn't mean you throw money at a problem, but it does mean that sometimes you pool resources. So I've got a whole little section in kind of reimagining outsourcing, which doesn't mean, you're paying out the nose for DoorDash or grocery deliveries or whatever, but it might mean starting a supper co-op in your neighborhood, which I did for 10 years when my kids were little. I cooked dinner once a week, and Steph did it on Tuesdays and Jenny did it on Wednesdays, and we all took turns. So, there's ways to kind of make the drudgery, I think, a little bit lighter if you're creative. So I offer up some solutions there. And then really the take home message is, you have to choose you first, regardless of what you think. It's not a selfish thing. You pick you learn to trust yourself, you learn to know what really matters to you. And then you're able to do that for everybody else around you. And that's ultimately what I think we all want to be part of, is a community who loves one another and does good things for one another, and lives these long, satisfied, happy lives. And that's my definition of a good life, is sort of sitting on the porch, kind of looking back as the sun goes down, and like that, today was a good day, but this was a good life.
I love it.
And that's what we're all looking for. Nobody sort of wants the CV on their tombstone, right?
No, I love it, Denise. And I think it's so great that you're bringing all this to light, because, I tell people we've had a lot of stuff going on. My son's car got stolen last week. We recovered it. And we've just had a lot of little crazy things. And it's funny because I look at all these things and I'm like, yeah, they suck. Things happen, right? But overall, probably like you do, I get up every day and I'm like, my life's pretty good for the most part. I get to do what I want to do. And like I mentioned early in the episode, I love the work I get to do and the things that I get to do. So even when bad things happen, they suck in the moment, but I also feel like overall my life feels fulfilled. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is what we want, right? And it's great because once you feel that way, there's really no looking back. You know what I'm saying? Like now, because you're on that. I feel like it's like you jump over that little bridge. You know what? Because you create that, and so it really comes back to all these things you're saying. Putting you first, identifying what's important to you, and giving yourself grace.
And
There's
being
so many.
real specific about it.
Yeah.
about it. Like everyone can be like, oh, I want a big house and
Right, right.
cars, or that like that's
Yeah,
all outside
right.
crap. Like,
No,
I mean, sure, that sounds great, but that's not, like, and so it's not easy, and
no,
you have to constantly be kind of having another conversation, constantly reiterating to yourself what matters, because it does change and it should. Like, what I wanted at 25 is not what I want at 53. Why would it be? Totally
right.
different.
No, I agree.
But there are through lines that, that really matter. And those are the things that I think are that's the real deal. So,
It's good
and that's
stuff.
what a good life is. It's not the good life. It's a good life. You're the only one who can figure out what that means for you.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be nice if we all could have one?
I know. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I do want to ask you on your book, because you said you did this in like 6 months. I love it. You moved, you did like I did the same thing. I just moved fast. I made a decision. It was like I got in the car one day. Somebody told me you need to write a book. So I go in the car. You're gonna laugh. This is 2019 when I launched when I put mine out. So I get in the car and I open up Facebook and I just said something like, I'm going to write a book, because I wanted people to hold me accountable to it. And then that was in maybe May. And then I spit it out in like October of that year. And then 2 weeks later, we launched this podcast.
Awesome.
And so, yeah. And so I love it. So I would love to know, just maybe for somebody listening, like, what do you feel like, what was the hardest part of writing that book for you? Like, what was I guess maybe just the toughest thing you had to do in that?
Well, like everything, you have a conception of what it's supposed to look like. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, well, if you're going to write a book, you're supposed to block out time on your calendar, and you're supposed to sit at your laptop, and you're supposed to write 2,000 words a day. Well, I tried that for like 3 days, and I was like, okay, this is not going to go anywhere. Like, there is nothing about me that does that. So then I was like, all right, I'm just going to not think about it. Just going to let it set for, because like I said, like that's how I do my best thinking. I'm a big power of the subconscious mind believer. And I was like, well, what do I really like to do? And this is funny. I like to talk. I mean, I'm a talker, you can tell. And I got through med school and residency and everything with my index cards. You should see the stat. I got index cards. I got index cards.
Great.
Like, I write it down on an index card. I put my thoughts down and it makes sense. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to get my stack of index cards and my trusty Pentel pencil.
Yeah.
And I'm going to write down the things that I think matter the most. And then I'm just going to do a little bullet outline of the things that I would sort of want to say. Okay, great. And then I took my stack of index cards and I put my headphones on and I went out walking, because I'm a walking talker. I think when I'm moving. And I talked the whole book. I did it on Otter, and I just talked the whole book. And, and I as a doctor, you learn how to do transcription, right? We've been doing transcription, so you say period, paragraph, next, whatever. And it made it really easy. So then when Otter kind of dumped it into Word, it was all at least sort of there. And then I could mush around it. And so
Great.
People who know me read the book and they're like, oh my God, it's like you're talking to me. And I'm like, well, it's because I was.
I was talking. Yeah.
I was talking to you. So, and then I read the audiobook. So that was actually really fun. I hear if you listen to it at time and a half, you can get it done in 3 hours.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to have to check your book out. I like the title. I like the star. It's very good. It's funny because when I wrote mine, we didn't have like Chat GPT or this Otter thing and all that. Now, and these tools are so great, because you kind of mentioned, the sitting down and writing thing. And you saw me laughing on that, because I kind of think I sort of had that same kind of mindset. And then I realized, no, you can't write when you just can't write to write. Like, I can't just sit down and write. So I would have to wait for it to like sort of come about, and it would just sort of like, and here's a funny thing. I get used to, we were walking our dogs every single morning. One of my dogs has gotten old now, so my husband's just taken the other one running. But we would walk every morning, and I would say that all of my ideas would come while we were walking the dogs. And then I wouldn't have anything with me. I wouldn't have my phone. I'd be like, so I'd tell my husband, I'd be like, do not forget this idea. Help me remember this idea when we get in the door, because I'm going to forget this, and I need you to help me remember this, because when I'm moving, that's when things will come up. So to your point on the book, yes, I'm glad you shared that, because somebody writing may think, again, they got to sit down and block these times. Sometimes you just, when the ideas flow, that's when you pull the paper or the pen or do the audio, whatever it is, have it ready so that when the ideas come out, you can start, if you're going to walk your dog, bring your phone so that you can try to get the idea in there before you get home.
That's the truth. Yeah. I mean, I do have girlfriends. I mean, one of my friends is a really successful novelist, and she does sit down and write.
Yeah.
Like that is her process.
Right.
she's a writer. Like
Yeah.
that's her profession. It's different than me. Like that's not my profession. So
Yeah.
anyway, it is really funny that different ways that people pull it off. But yeah, for me, it was a lot. It was actually really fun to do. And then I had my fairy goddaughters who kind of read through it, and they were like my hype squad, and kind of helped me figure some things out about where to put what and whatnot. So it was a fun project to kind of go down. And I the whole time I try to be entertained. Most of life is highly entertaining. And so I just was entertained by the whole process, learning about it, and meeting editors and talk, all this stuff. It's just not something I knew anything about. So
Good.
really cool.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was a good experience, because you
It was
have to
fun.
share your gifts and your knowledge with the world.
Yes.
Put it out there whatever way that works for
However
you.
that looks. That's
Exactly,
right.
exactly.
However that
So
looks.
I have 2 questions left. I want to ask you. This one is success tips. So what is your one thing in the morning that you do when you get up and like sets your day? Like that one thing that's important to you?
Well, I don't get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, don't do that if it doesn't work. Somehow I train my myself. I wake up now, like my alarm does. I come up before the alarm now. I'm like, what's up with that?
Well,
You know?
I appreciate that, but that is not me. I think because I spent, about 15 years getting up
Sure.
all night long every night,
Right.
or at least every third night. No, just
Yeah,
no.
you're like, no, we
Um,
did it. We're done.
Yeah, not again, never again. It's actually kind of cheesy, but I love it. Every day my husband comes in and leaves my Yeti of coffee on my
Oh,
bedside table,
nice.
and I get a kiss, and he tells me he loves me before he goes off to work, and I sit and I just enjoy my coffee, and I think about how lucky I am,
That is so
how grateful
awesome.
I am, and that's how I start every
That
day.
is so great.
With my dog, but I think that moment of just being like, we're at it again on the right side of the grass. A little bit of gratitude goes a long way, especially first thing in the morning.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I haven't had anybody say that before, so I love it. That's great. No, I think it's how long have you guys now been married?
We had our 28th wedding anniversary this past
You're
week.
right about where we are. So we had
Yeah.
29 in April. So yeah, so it's a long time,
It's
isn't
a
it?
long time.
A
And
long
then
time
also
to be in
it's
space
like,
with the same person.
I know, it seems like 2 days ago, but also really long time.
My kids laugh at us. Yesterday, we went to go up to where my son's a chef, and we went to go eat at his restaurant. It was so nice. They comped our meal. They love my son there. They always have good things to say about him. But he comes home, and I got to meet like the hostess, the manager. She came up, no, we love Sean, blah, blah, blah. So she goes back to my son and says, your mom is so nice. And I said, well, I don't know that your husband I don't know my husband would say that every day. So great.
I
She's
love
like,
it.
your
I
mom
love
is
it.
so sweet. I'm like, I know I'm nice, but I don't know if your dad's gonna go agree with that. Like, no. Oh, great. So, congratulations to you on your 28 years. That is so awesome. And I love that you shared that about the coffee, because it's really about the gratitude, right? It's just about finding the little things.
It's the little things,
Yeah.
In fact, I just finished Annabelle Monahan's newest book. It just came out maybe a week or so ago. And she writes a great book. Nora goes off script, and this new one is called Not a Love Story. And there's a couple in there that have been married a long time, and they said love is for breakfast, and love happens at breakfast. And basically the idea of it, like, romance happens at dinner time. They're dressed up, you have your makeup on, you're like, you're sort of presenting yourself out into the world. But love happens over breakfast. Nobody's got their makeup on. You're talking about your day. You're kind of having your cup of coffee. You're kind of, and it's those little things, the breakfast conversations, that's where like kind of the real true love is, and it keeps showing up. And I just thought, I don't know, it really resonated with me because I think that's true about anything. It's those little things that we do for one another that end up, being the building blocks of a good life. So the whole thing just made my heart sing. I thought it was really cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So Denise, if our listeners want to pick up the book or get in touch with you, where would you like us to send them?
Yeah, well, you can find the book at like the usual suspects, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, what have you. The Audible's on, Google, Apple, Spotify, whatever. The Audible is fun. I read it myself, so that was a hoot and a half. And then I have a website. It's Denise S. Brown, MD, or the Fairy God Doctor. I'll get you there too. But Yeah.
We'll make
Good.
sure when we get the show notes, when my guy puts all the bells and whistles on there, we'll get the websites in there so everybody knows where to find the book, find you, all the good stuff. But yes, I'm going to check it out myself because like I said, I love the title and I love the little star. And I saw you kind of moving with
That's
your
my
star.
magic wand. Yeah, it's a big old magic wand on the cover there.
No, I love it because having my, background, Mary Kay, we were all about these stars and, all that stuff. And that's another thing I miss too, is all that little glitzy
fun.
Yes, all that fun stuff that we got to do in there. So good.
But I want to tell you, congratulations, on the book coming out, all your success and your happy things that you're getting to do and the things that you're sharing and putting out into the world. So congratulations. It's awesome.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Thank you so much. And of course, to our listeners, we appreciate you. We hope that you find this episode both inspiring and informative. And if you do, you know what to do. Do all the things. First of all, go find Denise, get her book, but also subscribe, like, share, comment so that we can keep sharing all these fabulous stories and all this content with you. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you have to start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.